Imagine if Resident Evil 4, Doom 3, System Shock 2 and Aliens got together in some kind of hideous orgy and somehow managed to procreate. Their vile and sordid love child would look very much like Dead Space. Dead Space shamelessly draws inspiration from some of the coolest pieces of horror sci-fi ever made, and it all combines to make a fantastic horror shooter. You control Isaac Clarke, a member of a small team sent to check in with the USG Ishimura, a deep space mining vessel that has stopped responding to communications. Your initial mission is to find out what's going on and help them out, but things naturally go wrong right away as your ship crashes into the Ishimura. You and your companions emerge from the wreckage and naturally the first thing to happen is you get separated. It then quickly becomes apparent that the Ishimura is infested with hideous monsters that appear to be the former crew members. Your primary task is to find a way off the Ishimura, preferably alive, but along the way you will uncover the origin of the infestation, as well as discover the conflicts and trials of the former crew members through text, audio, and video logs left by the crew. These logs are more than a little reminiscent of those in System Shock 2, and through them you'll be able to bit by bit piece together the events leading up to your arrival on the ship. The big problem with the story, which is otherwise excellent, is there just isn't enough of it. There are far too few logs, and the entire middle third of the game is pretty much devoid of storytelling. Nevertheless, the story starts and ends well, but many more logs and perhaps a few well-developed side stories would have added a lot to the game, especially during the middle third. But while the storytelling dips in the middle, the game as a whole is consistently excellent. Taking place on a poorly lit ship in disrepair, and of course being a spaceship, the bulk of the areas are narrow corridors, the game has a strong sense of claustrophobia, which is made all the worse by the fact that your character fills a large portion of the screen, reducing visibility. Add to this the fact that enemies like to come at you from all directions, using air vents to move around, and simply playing the game can become quite a nerve-wracking experience. Although the game relies quite heavily on shocks, things popping out from the darkness to make you jump, a technique that I think is simply the bottom rung on the horror ladder and something to be deplored, it's actually well executed in Dead Space. The game expertly cultivates a sense of paranoia through frequent feints and tricks. The game may throw 5 enemies at you in one room and then 10 minutes may pass until the next fight, while corridors where you just know something's going to pop out at you are empty, while areas you know to be safe that you're backtracking through may throw enemies at you unexpectedly. The game knows what you're thinking and constantly tries to outsmart you, and it'll probably succeed, at least for the first third of the game. The fear effect pales after perhaps 4 hours, as by this time you'll have a good understanding of the combat mechanics, enemy strategy and so forth, but you'll also be sitting pretty on quite a hoard of supplies. Admittedly I played through on normal difficulty, but it was almost annoyingly easy. The game is more in line with what you might expect from an action horror game than a survival horror game. And that's perhaps just as well because the alien creatures known as necromorphs don't die easily. You kill them through, as the game calls it, strategic dismemberment, which is just another way of saying you cut them apart to kill them. The most common necromorph is humanoid, with razor-sharp protrusions on its arms, which are best killed by lopping the arms clean off. Another necromorph, a small baby-like creature, has tentacle-like appendages that need to be hacked off, while one big fatty necromorph has a belly full of annoying little creatures that will swarm all over you if you cut its belly open, so you need to be careful to kill the fatty while avoiding its stomach. The combat is built entirely around aiming at particular parts of the enemy to kill it, which is something shooter fans are used to, given that we of course always aim for the head, but Dead Space puts a fun twist on it. Many necromorphs can actually be decapitated without dying, they simply start flailing wildly in your general direction. Each enemy type, and there are around 7 or 8 types, has different kinds of attacks and different weaknesses, so you'll need to be pretty versatile in how you play. Killing the creatures isn't terribly challenging, especially for shooter veterans, but you're often fighting several at the same time, often different types at the same time, and they come at you from all directions. Add to this the fact that some weapons are better used against particular enemy types than others, meaning frantic weapon swapping, and combat can get pretty hectic at times. There are 7 different weapons in the game, but because you can only carry 4 at a time, not to mention your limited inventory means it would be wasteful to carry around ammo for all the different guns. you'll likely find yourself sticking to a select few. The first weapon you get, a plasma cutter, is ideal for severing appendages, making it a fine mainstay weapon for most of the game. You'll also find a flamethrower, a pulse rifle, my personal favourite, the Ripper, which fires circular saws about 10 feet ahead of you and suspends them in the air while they tear apart anything nearby, and a few other weapons. The game will only supply ammo in crates and on corpses for weapons you own, so you'll probably never run out of ammo for any of your weapons. As well as only carrying a select few weapons, you can increase your specialisation even further through an upgrade system. Scattered throughout the game, and also available at vending machines, are power nodes. These nodes can be used to upgrade your weapons in a variety of ways: clip capacity, reload speed, damage, and similar things. You can also upgrade your health and air capacity and improve some of your other abilities. The character development system isn't very deep, but it is well executed, and which weapons you upgrade and which of your abilities you improve will definitely impact how you play the game. At the vending machines you can buy and sell items, weapons and ammo, and store things for later use. Your inventory, map and objects menu, rather than being screens the game drops to when loaded, are projected as holographs ahead of your character in the game environment, so you're never taken out of the game experience except when saving. The immersive sense of cohesion this creates adds quite a lot to the feel of the game, along with the total absence of a traditional HUD. All the info you need is displayed on your suit or on your weapon. In addition to your arsenal, you have two special abilities, Stasis and Kinesis. Stasis allows you to slow enemies briefly, which is ideal for crowd control when you're a little overwhelmed, but it can also slow fast-moving objects, so it's used for simple time-based puzzles. Kinesis is pretty much a gravity gun. It's also used for simple physics-based puzzles, but you can also use it to launch their own razor-sharp limbs at enemies after severing them to finish them off. Neither of these two abilities is very prominent as a gameplay feature, but they are both extremely well implemented, and they play off other aspects of the game well. I mentioned earlier that you could increase your air capacity. You can do so because you'll sometimes find yourself in a vacuum. When in a vacuum you move slower and your breathing and heartbeat are all you hear. You don't hear your footfalls and gunfire as much as feel them, while everything else is silent. Your limited air capacity gives you a quite literal ticking clock in these areas, making them tense, especially when enemies show up. You'll also sometimes find yourself in areas with localized low gravity. The low grav areas are usually the backdrop for physics puzzles, while the game throws enemies at you from all angles. Neither vacuum nor low grav areas feature prominently, but again, they're implemented excellently and they both mix up the game in interesting ways. Visually, the game is utterly spectacular. The character models are amazing, the environments are extremely atmospheric thanks to excellent light and shadows, but perhaps the most impressive visual element is the animations, particularly the enemy animations. For some reason, these enemies remind me of Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion animation creatures, which is a huge compliment. The game is also super well optimised. It runs extremely well, loads and saves super fast, and I experienced no crashes. Perhaps even better than the visuals is the sound work. You're mostly listening to the ambient sounds of the spaceship, but it's used to excellent effect. It heightens the sense of paranoia as you hear things in the distance, but turn to see nothing, or hear a necromorph scuttling in the walls as you frantically try to track its whereabouts. When music is used, it's perfectly timed and perfectly written to evoke exactly the kind of feeling it intends. Horror lives or dies by its use of sound, and it seems the developers were well aware of that. The only complaints I have are minor, one being that the game wouldn't let me remap movement controls to the arrow keys. Not everyone uses WASD. The other being that the game doesn't recognise the side buttons on my Razer Copperhead mouse, which is ridiculous for a modern game. The other problem is corpses and their physics properties. Walk into a corpse and it'll slide along the floor at your feet. Run into a corpse and you might send it cartwheeling across the screen. These, coupled with the story dip in the middle third, are really the only legitimate issues with the game. Dead Space is hardly a horror masterpiece, but it certainly is a horror-themed third-person shooter masterpiece. It takes all of the best aspects of some of the best horror sci-fi out there, and mixes it all into 12 hours of awesomeness. If you like shooters, you have no excuse to not check it out.